Hello, welcome back. We're going to go over Monica Trieu's Chinese Vietnamese Identity book, Chapter 7. I am what I, in parentheses, sort of speak and celebrate culture identity. And so when I often teach these classes, I think that I don't want to actually just teach Chinese Vietnamese identity. That's a very particular and subcultural identity. So I often will contrast other identities, right? So actually something that I'm a big fan of is actually Awkward Black Girl. So raise your hand if you've ever watched Awkward Black Girl. I like it a lot because it talks a little about African American identity, but also it talks about culture, language, how you're interpolated. So let's go and see a couple clips of Awkward Black Girl, which is says a lot about identity and culture and how you're interpolated. Let's go speaking.
Am I the only one who pretends I'm in a music video when I'm by myself?
My booty shouts, booty shouts. Niggas wanna fuck me from behind. Being a this ass, niggas wanna feel up on this booty. They ain't got a chance. I be teasing, cheesing, leaning, playing niggas to the thing. They can't even check me, boo. I'm a motherfucking shit. Shit.
Awkward moment. What's the protocol for repeatedly running into someone at a stop sign?
Gee, missed you.
Oh my god!
Hey, I totally didn't even see you. It's been so long. I know, right?
No, seriously. What the fuck is it?
I guess that's how it works. Shit.
Are you supposed to acknowledge them every time? And how many fake laughs are acceptable before it becomes too much?
No, I saw you. Like, I know.
Is it rude to do the dramatic slowdown? Or what about the fake phone call? There's only so long I can hold a fake conversation.
No, I'm told. Yeah. No. Yeah.
The stop sign. To any ordinary person, it's a simple sign of direction. But for me, it's the epitome of social misdirection. Because I'm awkward.
Oh, fuck, another fucking stop sign? Are you shitting me? Are you shitting? We can do it together sometime. You're hilarious. Oh my gosh. Oh, yes. Another stop sign. Let's talk at work, right? We all like...
Let me introduce myself. My name is Jay, and I'm awkward. And black. Someone once told me those were the two worst things anyone could be. That someone was right. Where do I start? 3 months ago, I shaved my head. My boyfriend, D, the only guy I've ever loved, had just broken up with me.
You know what? I can't do this no more. I can't. I'm not happy. I'm uncomfortable. I don't even think you're happy. I gotta go. I just gotta go.
So I needed a fresh start. And to me, a fresh start meant crying in the mirror, cutting all my hair, getting drunk at the company holiday party, and sleeping with this guy, A, my coworker. 2 days later, D said he wanted to give it another shot.
I gave it some thought, and I want to make this work.
But my new lack of hair made him feel like less of a man, and a week later, he broke up with me.
I feel gay. No homo. But I can't do this no more.
Seriously?
So now, here I am writing violent rap lyrics in my bedroom.
Bitch nigga, you's a liar. I'll set your face on fire. I don't give a fuck.
It's too Nicki Minaj.
Stupid bitch nigga, I hope you drown. That'll turn my frown upside down. I'm a bad bitch. You're a pussy nigga. What the fuck rhymes with pussy nigga? Yes, you deserve to die, and I hope you burn in hell, nigga. Burn in hell, nigga. Burn in hell, nigga.
It's been my secret way of coping with stress since 6th grade. It gets me through my job, my relationships, and my life. It's odd, but what can I say? I'm awkward.
My booty shouts, booty shouts. Bouncing in my...
And this is number 2. They're very short. They're 4 minutes.
Offensive dumb fuck of an idiot.
Oh my god. Your hair! I go out of town for 1 month and I come back and it's like, did it shrink? Do you wash it? Can you wash it? Girlfriend, how are we gonna go get cornrows now? Why did you change it? Oh, it was Black History Month. Is that how your ancestors wore it? What about your boyfriend? Does he like it? He dumped you? Could you hook us up? I'm just kidding.
Situations like these make me angry and uncomfortable. I would love to express that to her.
Shut up! Shh! Shut up! Seriously, what's wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong with you?
But I'm passive-aggressive, and I hate confrontation. So I just hold my feelings inside until...
It reminds me of pubic hair. Can I touch it?
No!
Let me tell you about my job. I work at a call center for a new weight loss pill called Gutbuster, the side effects of which include a full month of nausea. We basically sell bulimia in pill form. I actually wouldn't mind my job if I didn't hate everyone.
12 individual packets?
There's the guy who can't take the hint.
12 individual packets.
The drama queen who never shuts up.
And when I confronted him, she's not even black. She was Puerto Rican. Oh no.
The loud black bitch.
For real?
Nah, but let me tell you, you just nasty though.
Just keep it down a little bit.
Keep it down.
Yeah, just I'm gonna call.
Yeah, anyway, so,
The guy who always makes weird noises. And the space invading germ chick who probably has AIDS.
can you put this in the, I'll just put it here. Let me show you these files.
They're all pretty much the worst people in life,
Jay.
but they don't hold a candle to this bitch.
I decided to promote Nina.
Oh my god!
Nina.
I hate her.
Hey.
Look, I know things have been tense between us ever since I got the position that you wanted. And I thought about it, and I know how humiliating and embarrassing that for you.
I actually don't remember being that affected by it. So stupid light-skinned bitch. You think you're the shit, but everybody knows your vagina smells like fish. 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 No lesbo. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure you were. Look, my sorors and I are going out to dinner after work if you want to meet up later.
You know what? That's actually really nice. I didn't eat lunch today,
Oh,
so...
no, I meant after my sorors and I eat. Those are my girls.
Actually, you know what? I forgot. I'm actually doing something tonight, so thanks. Maybe next time, right?
Okay, yeah.
So I'm officially making today my last day.
Ma'am, I'm pretty sure downing the pill with a milkshake is actually counterproductive. So, hello?
I need something new, something fresh, something... Maybe things are starting to look up for me after all.
Fred, hey! I'm so glad you...
Awkward. Is there any proper way to play off waving to the wrong person?
Woo! Woo! Ah! Another sale! Ow! Woo! It's just something we do around here, like, want to congratulate ourselves.
Who does that?
Everybody, all of us, we do it together.
I've never seen anybody do that. Did you just make that up?
Oh.
Okay. Well, when you're done high-fiving yourself, I'd like you to meet Fred.
He's the newest member of our team. Watch out, she hits people.
As I pondered thoughts of murdering Nina, I realized I can't just quit. But what's keeping me here?
You guys, we're virgin. Oh my God.
Maybe I'll stay. I can't let Nina win. Plus, I need the money. It's not stalking if you don't mean any harm. He gets coffee around 8:50, comes out around 8:57, and walks to work. And every day I play out a new way to make him fall in love with me. Sometimes he falls in love with my wit.
Bitches be tripping.
You are so funny.
Sometimes he finds me irresistibly sexy.
You are so sexy. What are you doing later on?
And sometimes he understands me, like no one else does.
Awkward.
Oh no!
No, I get you.
But I'm tired of planning. It's time to take action. No! Or not. Nina's thirstiness wins again.
Ignore.
Was he standing behind me the whole time?
Hey! You disappeared on my call? You called me? Did you call me? What? This phone is such bad service. Oh, I hate this phone. I'm so mad right now. But I was standing right behind you. I heard the phone ring. That's the thing. It'll ring, and then it'll just shut down when I try to answer it. But I heard you say ignore. I didn't say that. I said senor because that's what I call my phone. Because I hate my phone. Just like I hate Mexicans.
I don't hate Mexicans.
You hate Mexicans? Yes. I hate them. I'm a horrible person. Me too. I get you.
Things have changed ever since I decided not to quit. Not only are we in a new building, but we're working directly with a medical clinic to manufacture our pills in-house. My boss is an idiot, but I have to give her props for her business skills. Every week she's managed to bring on new employees, some of whom are actually not stupid. But the upside to this merge is that Fred and I are now working directly together.
Wait, taking them pills.
What's about?
Hey, Jay. You told a customer the powdered version of the pill will be available on the 6th. It's the 16th.
Oh, it must have been a typo. I apologize. I'm sorry.
But you are aware that it's the 16th and not the 6th like you wrote?
Yeah, I am. It was a typo. My mistake.
Okay, well, just be careful. Because somewhere in the world, that typo probably cost someone a life. Just be aware of that. You, young man. Good job.
Had I been aware of the homicidal powers of a typo, I probably would have been more careful. Long hallways are the epitome of discomfort. I've already said hi to this woman. What other interaction could we possibly have?
It's a really nice day.
Can you follow me?
What am I supposed to do with my face? Am I supposed to look at her the whole time? Do I act like the blank walls are interesting enough to stare at? Do I make eye contact? Do I have to smile at her again? Okay, that wasn't so bad.
I took the liberty of printing that article out for you, in case Nina's message didn't get through to you. I'm joking.
Oh. Niggas love me. I'm on my Kim K.
Hey, when you're done laughing, can you make copies of the call reports and put them on my desk? Okay, thanks.
Does this girl live in the hallway? Why am I so uncomfortable? What's my issue? Is it just me? Can other people tell? Wait, what was that?
Oh my God. You're awkward.
I know.
I get you.
This could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
It's the Fly Girls and their TV show.
If you ever want to watch the rest, they're all 4 minutes each, and I think it's a pretty great show that speaks to cultural identity, but I think speaks to African American cultural identity, but I think it shows a lot of other people's identity as well. All right, so it's a great intro to Chapter 7, Min Zhao, actually Monica Trieu. I am what I sort of speak and celebrate. All right, so guys, write down if I can speak another language. So generally, if it was a classroom, I'd have everyone raise their hand. Who speaks another language? And at Cal Poly, actually, I would say over 50% of the class actually speaks another language. And then I'd ask, well, who doesn't speak another language, and does that affect your ethnic identity? And invariably, I will get a lot of students, particularly who are Asian or Latin American or Mexican, that will say, well, I don't speak Spanish, and people think I make it up that I don't speak Spanish, and they think I'm not as Mexican, okay? So actually, it's a really good chapter because it talks about the importance of language. And let's start with the quote. Quote, "Language is not just a means of communication. Language defines the limits of communities and nations and leads to bounded national identities and ethnic solidarities." And that's by Alessandro Portes and Ruben Rumbart. Okay, pretty famous quote, and it really says a lot to identity. So if you can speak another language, does that mean that you have that identity? So if you can speak Korean, does that give you an insight to Korean identity? And actually, there's lots of identity theories, particularly on language, that makes the argument that actually, if you speak that language, you actually do have some of that identity because you understand through their grammar how that is. So very interesting, and that speaks a lot to English because English is the global language, very much dominated by American English. And so what does it mean when a lot of people are watching American movies and speaking English with an American accent? When I was in Hong Kong, I met a lot of these kind of international elite students from all over the world, from Russia, from Korea, Japan, and from Africa. And it's really interesting. They have not gone to the United States, but they had kind of an American accent, and they could actually change into like a British accent if they wanted to. And it's very interesting how language is... it's interesting. It defines you. It can cut off your communication and it can and widen it. So this chapter is very important because it really emphasizes the language. Now I want you to think: can you speak another language? And do you not speak another language? Has that affected your identity if you don't speak Spanish, right? And think about your future children. Right? Do you want them to have insights to other languages, other cultures? Well, language is a good kind of way to look at that. All right. So these are big language kind of and theories, okay, about culture and identity. The first one is Gordon. So these are classical sociological theories. So social majors out there, I know you probably are well versed in this. So in 1964, Gordon argues that acculturation and assimilation is inevitable. Okay. So if we went to the earlier lectures when we talked about the ethnic American assimilation model, right? Let's go back. So if I asked you, what is the ethnic American assimilation model? Could you answer it? So write down the answer now if you have it, and actually define it. Okay, so that classical sociological model based on Gaines in 1920s argues that all ethnic groups eventually actually will assimilate, become part of the, quote, melting pot, right? And usually I'll have, if I had a kind of an in-class class, I'd actually have every single person in class answer it. Do you think this will happen? Eventually, will we eventually become assimilated, right? Everyone. And some students will say, yeah, I think in a matter of time we'll all become assimilated. And other people are like, no. It's good to be different. It's good to have your own cultural sensibilities, and they'll kind of argue the salad bowl theory, okay? So here Gordon argues that, and very much based on the 1920 sociological studies on European immigrants, right, that eventually you will become assimilated, right? And again, in our previous lecture, we talked about how assimilation for early Europeans was not actually smooth, right? There was a lot of German speakers, a lot of French speakers, and something called World War I and World War II specifically hit certain ethnic groups, particularly European ethnic groups, very harshly, particularly if you're in the opposite side of the war. And so those immigrants actually specifically taught their children not to their ethnic language, instead just English, right? So if you're wondering why, remember our class, we have to write an ethnic identity paper, and you're going to write it on yourself. You're going to write your own ethnic identity paper on yourself. I want to locate like when you spoke a language, when you lost a language, and what effect it was, and what structural changes affected you. Okay, so another theory is culture, And as an anthropologist, I kind of want to almost agree with this. It's social constructed, but it's even more. So the second one is culture is a moving target, and what that means is it's always changing. It's always moving. So all these people saying, well, that's not authentic. That's not real Mexican. That's not real Chinese, right? Well, what is real? Because it's always like moving and changing. It's not like, if you look at Mexico, right, you have over 40% of Mexicans speaking an indigenous language, right? So what is Mexican-American identity if in Mexico there's like so much diversity with indigenous and speaking different languages, and particularly if you look at the theory. So like, for instance, let's say I'm writing a paper on Mexican-American identity, okay? Literally, in my class, it's like literally 20 papers about Mexican-American identity. Do you identify as Hispanic? Do you identify, and many, I'm elaborating on this comment on, is culture a moving target? So we have people like Diego Vigil, who wrote an excellent book called From Indios to Chicano. And he makes an argument that Mexicans are a tri-racial group, Caucasoid, Negroid, and Mongoloid people, right? So do you believe in that? Is that your ethnic identity, a tri-racial group? You have people like Gloria Andazola in her book Borderlands, who argues that, you know what, we live in the border, and it's not here or there. It's like third space. You have a forked tongue. You speak Spanish and other languages. And she even goes further than that, right? She talks about sexuality and how the borderlands is open and you have fluid sexuality, right? Is that your ethnic identity? Okay, and then you have some ethnic identity papers like Cosmic Raza or La Raza theories, where it's a mix of all these things. So it's a racial group. It's cosmic, okay? And or would you want to argue, if you're writing a paper and you are of Latino Mexican descent, would you like to argue the Chicano studies? Are you theories of Cesar Chavez? I'm a political Chicana, and I'm a Chicana studies major, and I identify that way. Well, what if you're a Oaxacan identity? You would look into Michael Carney's work on Oaxacan identity, which is a sub-ethnic indigenous group in Mexico, right? So you have all these different, or Leo Chavez has all these other books on ethnic identity as well. So again, you see how in my students in this class, this quarter, I have maybe around 45 students, and maybe 20 of them are of Mexican descent, and no two papers are the same, right? Some students say, my parents are both ethnically Mexican, but I'm light-skinned, and light-skin matters because people think I'm white, and I identify as white, and I grew up in Whittier, and that's how it is, right? Other students are like, well, I feel uncomfortable every single day in Cal Poly because I'm a dark-skinned Latina, and I'm very aware that I'm the darkest-skinned Latino in class, and I just feel uncomfortable. Every day I come to Cal Poly, I don't feel comfortable. So again, you can make maybe a stereotypical argument or a very dicto simplistic argument that all Mexicans will have the same identity, but if anything, everyone has a very different identity based on your location, where you lived, your family, and also language, right? So in our class alone, I'm gonna have 45 identity papers next Thursday, and a lot of it's gonna be, I'm gonna look at, do you speak that language, and if that has an effect on your cultural identity. And definitely, I think when I look at this second bullet, culture is a moving target, one can argue that. Is there really authentic? Okay. Some people do argue there is authentic. Postmodernists argue there isn't, right? But that's a postmodernist argument, okay? So the third bullet is by Nagel in 1994, and his position is that cultural knowledge, it's like your identity, your position has something to do with cultural knowledge, right? So you're that ethnic group if you have cultural knowledge of that. So if you know that language, then you are that ethnic group. If you know that food, you are that ethnic group. If you know that attitude, kind of like the French kind of habitus, if you have that, if you know how to be in that space, then you have that cultural identity. If you know the holidays or traditions, then you are that cultural identity. So this, again, is another cultural identity theory that is very different, right, from, let's say, Gordon's, because Gordon says, eventually we're all going to be the same. We're all going to be the soluble, okay? This is very different from the moving target. You can never pick it. It's always changing, evolving, right? Nagel actually argues that you have to know these cultural have this cultural knowledge to be that ethnic group. So very interesting, because a lot of people actually do know different holidays from different ethnic groups. Does that mean, right, that you are that ethnic group? And if you look at the terms Chicana or Chicano, there are new definitions that people who are not just descriptively Mexican or Mexican American, but also people who advocate for Mexican Americans can identify as Chicana, Chicanos, right? Allies can, right? So again, you know, these are, I actually could go into 100 identity theories, but that's another main one, okay? A fourth identity theory is that identity should be viewed as a continuum. Okay, it's like a long stretching line that has no beginning, no end, and it's just changing. Okay, so again, I like you to write down your notes on which one do you agree with, right? So we don't have a class here that has students, but online, if you could write it in our blogs. How about write maybe 500 words on which identity theory do you believe in, which ethnic identity which one applies to you? Right? Because if you look at Nacho's argument, let's say if you don't speak Spanish, then you're not really Mexican, okay? Or if you believe in culture is a moving target, then you are what you say you are, right? There's all this new stuff, and actually Stephen Murphy, I think his name is Shaggy, is it Matsu? I'll have to look that up. He just wrote a book called Half is Whole, and it's excellent. It's an excellent book about HAPAs, half Asian and half Anglos or half Asian and half something else, such as African American. And there is this whole phenomena, right, of what do you identify with, right? And in that book in particular, which I love because he talks about how do you identify as Japanese or do you identify as black? Do you identify as Japanese? Do you identify as Anglo? And he gives these great examples about how your mom has such a huge impact, right? So all these theories don't talk about the mom, right? But who spent all the time raising you? Invariably, mostly, it's your mother, right? And these interracial couplings, often the woman is Asian, right? And so that woman, you know, a home clustered with the children, often gives a lot of identity. And so he actually interviews a lot of these Japanese black mixes. And he asks them who phenotypically look African American, what do you identify as? And they're clearly say, I identify as Japanese. I eat Japanese food. I have Japanese, I know Japanese languages. That's just how I feel every day. I feel Japanese, right? And then he also interviews people who, and his identity through adoption. So there's actually a really famous football player, and I think his name is it Scott Fajita? He's a football player, and he's actually Anglo. He's like Euro-American, but he's actually adopted by third-generation Japanese-American, Sanseis. And, you know, you interview him. He's in an interview. He says, I feel Japanese. I'm Japanese-American. I'm Asian-American. Both his parents, he eats Japanese food. That's what he's raised with. His parents took him to Japanese kind of holidays, and that's how he identifies as. Another example in that book, which is excellent, I highly recommend that you buy it. It's it's a book that everyone should have. There's this now new phenomena of all these Japanese American, third-generation Japanese Americans adopting en masse these Chinese kids, these Chinese babies, actually, from China. So they're adopting these Chinese kids, and they're raising them Japanese, right? So are these Chinese kids from China, these babies, are they Chinese or are they Japanese? Because they're growing up eating Japanese food. They're doing the taiko drums. They're going to Japanese Saturday class, right? Are they truly Japanese? Because both their parents are Japanese. They're raised in like Japanese culture. So again, that's like a kind of something for you to think about. How are you raised? What is your language? What is the food that you eat every day? What are your attitudes? Are your attitudes Mexico City kind of Spanish? Is that like how you speak your Spanish? Or do you speak with a formal kind of Spanish from Spain? What holidays do you celebrate? Okay, so that's all these things go into play when you think of ethnic identity. It's truly fascinating. I love it. It's wonderful, and I will enjoy and I look forward to your papers. So let's take a piece of paper out, okay, on one side, and after that we'll take a break of 2 minutes. So we'll have a break. Take a sheet of paper out, okay. On one side, list all the languages you speak, all the languages that you were taught. So if you went through high school, you learned Spanish. If you went through high school, learn German. Let's put it on one side, okay. On the other side, actually write down if that language has affected you in terms of your ethnic identity. So if you're fluent in Spanish, you're fluent in Mandarin, if you're fluent in language, has that affected you in any way? Okay. All right. And if you can, also on that side, what kind of things can languages show, bring, and teach you? Okay. So let's answer that. Let's give that 1 minute. Let's give it 2 minutes. It's been a minute and a half, almost 2 minutes. So let's actually start naming off some languages you possibly could speak. Spanish, Armenian, Italian, German, French, various dozens of languages, right? So what do you think that this language shows or brings or teaches you, right? Some people, and this is where I think the blog is actually really great for our class, is you can answer this actually in our blogs, right? You can answer this in 500 words, and we're going to have blogs, and we're going to also have a response. So you're going to blog, but then you also have to respond to another blog for 300 words, okay? So one of the things I want to talk about is language and what it can show and bring you. Well, you look at theorists like Merleau-Ponty, and Merleau-Ponty makes some really interesting arguments. And he says that when you speak another language, it literally changes your thinking pattern, okay? That is crazy, right? Speaking a different language changes your thinking pattern? What? What the bleep? Okay? Yeah, that's one of his arguments, right? And there's other like anthrolinguistics people who argue that, you know, words for different languages convey thought, right? So for instance, in English, when we talk about innocent or guilty, it's very definitive, right? In English, it's very, in our language, it's very definitive. You're either guilty or innocent. Well, you know, in like Japanese, actually they don't have that extremely strict definition. In Japanese languages and in Chinese and Mandarin, it's either you can be guilty, but you can have special circumstances. So you're not like, it's not a guilty where it's definitive, right? It can change, it's malleable, right? So you think about in terms of incarceration, right? What kind of culture do you want to live in where you have a definitive, you're guilty or you're innocent, or would you want other cultures where the guilty word doesn't actually mean as firm as it means in America, right? And so that is very interesting, right? It really, language really can show, and language can limit you, language can make it tighter. It's something that I want you to think about. Now, in some cultures, there is no such thing as right and left, right? So now I think all the Americans class are, what? There's no right and left? That is right. That's why you take anthro classes, okay? So in some cultures, you know, instead of asking, you know, where's the direction, right? Or where is it? Actually, people usually, in some, particularly hunter-gatherer societies in jungles, they have something called kind of longitudinal direction. So if you ask, where is the walnut or something, they'll say, well, it's northeast, north-south, it's southern eastern, okay? So they actually use it all four directions, and that's how they kind of communicate, right? So imagine how elaborate your life could be if you had this kind of communication. Instead of right-left, which we have in America, right? We would actually, people would say, well, it's in northwest, northeast. It's above you, you know, 50 degrees, right? So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. And also, in terms of our colors, right? Now, in English, we have kind of, in our English, we have kind of definitive colors. It's we have the rainbow. You kind of learn the crayons. You get a little crayon. They teach you yellow, and then there's red, and there's like purple, right? So we usually have the primary colors that they teach you in first grade. Well, if you learn Russian, not only do they have the colors, but when you describe colors, you have to describe is it a light yellow or is it a dark yellow? Okay, is it a light red or is it a dark red? So you can see how that is so much richer, so much deeper than how I think Americans look at it, right? So again, that conveys that kind of those type of languages really makes a difference in how you see the world, right? Do you see the world in colors, or do you see the world in colors that are perceptibly different in terms of how deep they are in color or how light they are? So again, that is pretty interesting how language has a huge effect on how you think, your depth perception, and even really important things such as penalties, right, in terms of incarceration, right? So little things in color, but it can actually be extremely, I think, very, very important in terms of legal systems, right? If you come from a culture where the definitive you're guilty versus it's wrong, but there's some sort of redemption. It's not a pure guilt where you cannot come back from it, right? So that is really interesting. And again, in your paper right now that you wrote down your language and how that affected you. Really, if you know English, it really has affected you, right? And if you know other languages, it really has affected your identity. So if you don't think about it, let's think about it now. Like, how has languages affected your cognitive ability, right? Well, when I was going through UCLA, I actually taught SATs for a long time to make extra money, right? And it's been proven that students who actually know 2 languages or more have higher SAT scores, not just in the English section, but math and English section, right? So there's all these like debates on ESL, right? Students who are bilingual, and when they first go into elementary, actually, they're a little bit slightly below the English only speakers, but then once they hit 7th grade, actually they catch up, right? And once they get into high school, people who are bilingual tend to actually do better in school, right? And they do better in English, right? So it's kind of these arguments. And these, if you want to write a paper on language ability and how it affects your ethnic identity, get out there. The studies are well there, because in California in particular, where I'm lecturing in, we've had so many of these debates, and so we actually have these studies already out where language has a huge effect on your cognitive ability and actually has a positive effect, because senior citizens who know 2 languages actually tend to get Alzheimer's later, right? Or have less of Alzheimer's, right? So again, I really can't emphasize how language has a huge effect on your, not just how you think, but also how your ethnic identity and how you relate to other people. So so wonderful. All right. Also, I think the most basic thing that we can talk about is how can language connect you to others, right? Can you speak, even if you have an accent when you speak Spanish, even if you have an accent when you speak Vietnamese or something, or Mandarin, can that kind of connect you to others? If you say a word in their kind of homeland language, does that mean something? Is there some psychic connection? Okay, some people think that, actually, and I would definitely agree that, if you speak another person's language, it is a window into their kind of culture, right? Just like food is, just like other elements. But language is a big key. Actually, my last class, this actual lecture was such a hot topic, and everyone started talking about what kind of Spanish they spoke and how they spoke Spanish and from Spain, or they spoke Mexico City Spanish, right? And how it's so different from Chicano Spanish and so different from these Salvadoran Spanish, and how it totally affected them. That actually, in my classes, I generally have a debate. And they were so infused by this kind of topic that actually our debate was, if you don't speak that language, can you really be that ethnic group or have that true ethnic identity? And it was really interesting. We had like 20 students arguing that if you don't speak Spanish, you're not Mexican. You're not truly Mexican. And we had 20 other students who argued the opposite. And they had theory. They had lots of good sources. And they made a good argument on both sides that it was just wonderful, right? And they included things like, if you're deaf, well, you can't speak your language. Does that mean you're not Mexican, right? So it was, I couldn't believe the source they came up with, which really interesting. So I really want you to think about, does your language affect you, right? And does your lack of having a language, does that close doors for you, right? So, and of course, this is all change, right? You can learn Spanish tomorrow. You can learn Russian tomorrow. And does that affect your ethnic identity? Does that affect your thinking? So something to think about. All right. Ancestral language interrupted. Let's be honest. Guys, in this chapter we talk about the Chinese Vietnamese. Well, to be honest, they don't really speak Chinese or Vietnamese anymore. Okay, it's kind of like first grade at this point or nothing, okay? And there are actually a lot of immigrants, let's be honest, are just really more comfortable speaking English, right? You kind of grew up on Pokemon, you kind of had cars, you're a Power Rangers fan, and somehow, if all your friends speak English, you watch TV that's English, and maybe you encounter your parents a few hours a day, somehow English overtook your ancestral language, and, well, that does have an effect on ethnic identity, right? So raise your hand, guys. If you're at home, do you just speak English at home? And did your parents have that as a kind of a prerequisite? Did they make you do that? And invariably in my classes, if I poll people, and I generally do, first generation people that speak speak Spanish, or first generation who speak Mandarin, you know what? They have a stronger ethnic identity, okay? They speak the language, and it has kind of an effect, right? A lot of second generation students say, well, okay, people think I'm being snobby because I don't speak Spanish, but really I don't know Spanish, okay? And people who just don't speak any ethnic Asian language anymore, what does that make you, right? Sometimes they still firmly say, yes, I'm Vietnamese. I speak no Vietnamese, but yes, I'm Vietnamese. So again, this is something that I want you to think about, and particularly if you have kids, right? Now knowing that language does have an effect on ethnic identity and also your cognitive abilities, right? What are you going to do for your kids? All right, language as a symbolic tool, okay? Well, if you speak another language, number one, it kind of helps identify you. So do you agree with that or disagree? If you speak Chinese, right, people think you are Chinese, right? If you speak Russian, people think you're Russian, right? Of course, this goes against, Ronald Dukakis would disagree with this, right? Because Ronald Dukakis would say, no, Asian Americans, you have a racial uniform, and it doesn't matter if you speak it or you don't speak it. You're always going to be identified as, interpolated as an Asian person, right? But here, this is a different argument, right? Ronald Dukakis is talking about how you facially or phenotypically look, right? This argument is that language helps kind of identify who you are, right? So if you speak Spanish, maybe you might identify more with being Honduran or Salvadorian, right? And if you are Asian and you speak Spanish, then maybe you have some sort of co-ethnic identity, sort of solidarity there. So one of the quotes that I love is, remember, she's looking at Chinese Vietnamese at home, right? So they're actually not, quote-unquote, legitimately, I don't want to say legitimate, but they're, quote-unquote, not what one would think of as pure Vietnamese, since they do have the Vietnamese passport, and then they moved here, they have American passport, but they were ethnic Chinese minorities in Vietnam. So one of the quotes that I think is really intriguing is, quote, "I speak Vietnamese at home, I must be Vietnamese." So this is really interesting, right? One of the people that she interviewed says, well, if I speak Vietnamese at home, I'm kind of must be Vietnamese, right? Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? Some people would agree with that if you speak that language, you are that culture, right? Or definitely a huge window in that culture, okay? Now, another quote that she has is, "I can tell it's going to fade eventually. I care a lot about it, but it's going to fade." And if you're actually interested in this book and you're kind of wondering, God, how interesting, who did she interview? Well, I actually know her, and she interviewed primarily the Cal Poly students and actually UC Irvine students. So, and I don't know if she interviewed some UC Riverside students, but she primarily looked for Chinese Vietnamese students, right? And so in this area, it's primarily, she compared LA to Orange County, right? Vietnamese, and so they're Chinese Vietnamese, and so primarily she looked at a lot of Cal Poly students. Okay, so I really think that a little heartbreaking. The second quote is, "I can tell it's going to fade eventually, but I care a lot about it, but it's going to fade." Right, and now that how language has kind of a deep impact on your identity, right? And it's something if you can't pass to your children, right? How is that gonna affect their identity, right? Because again, remember, we had this very fluid and very wonderful and very deep kind of European languages, right? And it's really interesting. Benjamin Franklin was very anti-German, right? We had a vote that actually at one point the national languages could have been German and English, right? And Benjamin Franklin was really anti kind of German, and he kind of fought it off, and then we just eventually had our official language was English. But really, you can locate how it faded, and it faded particularly for our, we could have been Europe. We could have had many different European languages, but, right before World War I, right before World II, and during and after, there was a lot of different European sentiment, and that ethnic minority groups, those white ethnic minority groups that Karen Brocken talks about, they decisively decided not to teach their children those ethnic languages, and that has had an impact, right? We don't have fluid German speakers as much as we did back when Benjamin Franklin was around. So again, this has a huge kind of a deep impact. And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing to keep your language? Is it not? That's something for you to decide. All right, so here we're going to take a break. I think we talked a lot about languages, and we'll take a break, and we'll come right back with the next chapter.